I hear that so often is that we're not a target. Well, the fact that you were in business means that money is involved. Even in nonprofits, if they collect any sort of finances in any
Yep.
way, then there's money there. And that means that someone without is interested.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Manoj Tandon. Welcome to another episode of Dark Rhino Security Confidential. We have another fabulous guest here today. But before we get to him, I need to remind you to please hit the like and subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, but it helps us out a lot. And with that, without further delay, I'd love to introduce you to Matthew Waddell is an incident response and digital forensics expert. He's been in the game for over 25 years, and that's a long time. He's been helping governments, global enterprises, and small businesses. He has also supported our government in the United States with counterintelligence investigations and other frontline overseas operations. So without further delay, Matthew, thank you so much for joining us today. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get started in this business? How did you get to cyber? Were you, by education, a computer scientist, or what's your origin here?
I fell in love with it at a very early age. I remember being in college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. A cousin of mine that worked at AOL at the time, this is back in the 90s, suggested that there will always be people trying to break into computers. And I think that James Bond was on the TV at the time. And so it sort of meshed in my head. And I was like, I can do this as a career. And I absolutely fell in love with it. I finished college up. I have degrees in computer science and business management. And immediately my next job was at NASA, working for their IR team in their SOC. And from there, it's just been.
I would imagine that from an intellectual property standpoint, NASA was probably a hot target. Did you see a lot of foreign adversaries?
It was, and this is back in the 90s and early 2000s. They are the largest private network in existence. They spread out, globally and have such a large spread that handling incident response from such a geographical standpoint where everything is targeting it, in some ways it was a logistical challenge. And this was early on where we didn't have the tools that we have today. And when I'm mentoring younger incident responders, they have a press button solution for a lot of things. For us, we were having to write scripts in the background to try and figure out how to sort things and figure out what was going on and how to contain things appropriately.
Now, for the curiosity in all of us, since we have the opportunity to have you here, is like when you look at a network like NASA, I imagine there's levels of data where it's public information, secret information, top secret information. I would imagine they don't all traverse the same network, or do they actually?
No, they shouldn't. And NASA was just the beginning of my career. From there, I went on and I've worked for almost all of the three-letter organizations in some aspect, ones that you've heard of and at least one that you haven't. They do a very good job of network segmentation on the government side, and that classified systems have their own segmentation to where they don't touch the regular internet, very limited scope. Small, medium businesses and enterprise businesses do not do a good job of data classification and therefore segmentation of their data and networks, which is probably one of the first things that they should work on from that.
Now, it used to be that network segmentation was an expensive exercise. So people didn't do it. I don't think that's true anymore. So if you're suggesting that, how do organizations look at it, especially small, medium businesses? For them, network segmentation, they're like, we can't afford all that tech and some guy to come in here. It's my uncle's kid that supports my IT shop.
Absolutely. Right now, it doesn't cost anything to do network segmentation. It is time and knowledge for how to do that. On my personal router, I have all of any IoT devices that I have. I have a weather station and some security cameras are all on a separate network, which was just a check button and then configuration to add them to. So it didn't cost me any money. It only took me a little bit of time to set it up. And now none of those devices can affect this computer and my wife's computer as we traverse the network. But it didn't cost any extra money. And the basic inexpensive devices have this capability in it. Any business network would have the ability to segment and create multiple streams to where you could put finance in its own department, because that's a heavy target. If you're in business today, you have money at some point, and that's attractive to a threat actor. So putting finance into its own compartmentalized aspect so that operations and customer use cannot get to it would be the very basics of security.
People will push back on that, Matthew, and they're going to say, well, we have network printers. I can't make this up. They're going to say that now we can't use the printers over in finance, or we can't use Charlie's printer over in HR because that's closest to my office if you segment the network. Or they'll come up with other excuses for it.
They absolutely will. Security is the understanding of consequences. If you want everything to be flat and open and be able for finance to print on a printer in operations, you will make compromises in that aspect. If you segment properly and you do security well, it will create a little bit of friction, but it does, the benefits far outweigh the rub that happens from that point. But you're right. It is, my house would be much better if I didn't even have a front door on it. I don't have iris scanners. I don't have, and while my family is my most important asset, I don't have a threat against me. If I did, I would have a better front door with iris scanners and more secure locks, but I don't. So I have just the regular lock. But when I walk up with my groceries in my hand and I have to fiddle with the keys and get the lock open, it's an acceptable use for living in a secure house. Security is kind of the same way. You have to put your password in. You need a good, strong password in order to access. And once you've understand that simple little keys, like passwords that are just password or non-existent at all, hurt you more than help you, you start to embrace it a little bit. People will push back, and I think that is more of a knowledge and an education standpoint, which is one of the main things that we do in security. It's one of the reasons you're having this podcast, is because
that's right.
You're educating users as to what good practices are so that they can get better.
Yeah, absolutely. I would wish people would listen more, because it seems like the same cycles keep repeating themselves again and again and again. And I want to get to ransomware because you've talked about a few things in your last couple statements that are going to directly feed into that. But before we do get into that, what other matters of hygiene? So you mentioned passwords, you mentioned network segmentation. If you were just going to run off like a couple, 3 or 4 things that would be a great soundbite for people to know, hey man, if you're not going to do anything at all, at least do this.
I think, and it's as boring as it sounds, is password hygiene is the number one thing. And password hygiene is the key. If you have a very simple key that is easy to copy, i.e. a short password that is easy for a computer to guess, then it doesn't matter what you do on the back end. If you have, everyone should have long, unique passwords. I mean by that, longer than 12 characters. One of the first things I did in computer security was password cracking. And if it's less than 12 characters, I can get into it in less than an hour, typically by running dictionary attacks or rainbow tables against it, password guessing. Computers are very good at that. We tend to, humans, choose passwords that are easy to remember and easy to break. So when we create the complex passwords, that's not necessarily helping us, because the computer can guess the capital P, the @ sign, $, WORD, and guess that very quickly within milliseconds. The second thing is having unique passwords. If I used a password on my LinkedIn profile and I also used that password in my email, if you capture one of them, you can try it against everything. Yeah, you can, and threat actors will capture passwords and then try it against every conceivable list of websites to see what other access they have, to see what else they can capture and grab. Password hygiene is boring to talk about, but it is the most important part of it. Everything else after that, data encryption, network segmentation, classification of what you have, what's important versus what's not important, those all come secondary to blocking that initial access.
What are your thoughts on Passkeys?
I like Passkeys. I have a hardware YubiKey that this system will not log into something unless this hardware is here, and it has a little push button that I can press. It is the strongest possible password combination that we have. And it doesn't send the password through clear text. It sends a response to a question, so to speak. So the password is never exposed. And if you don't have this hardware key, you can't get to easily get to what it's accessing.
And Matthew, what about tools like LastPass or the Android password manager or Apple's password manager, where it's generating randomized, very long length keys? Are those as easy to guess?
No, but I'm a big fan of password managers, and I push that because the password manager can maintain and create very strong passwords. And then I only have to control one very long multi-factor authentication to access my password manager, leave it logged in for a little while I'm doing work, and it will automatically log itself out afterwards. But it will help me manage complex long passwords without writing them down, without keeping them in an open text or something of that manner. I'm a big fan of them. The Bitwarden is a good one. It's free. The enterprise level is very inexpensive. It's a little less known than the popular ones such as LastPass, which occasionally they do get compromised. It does happen, right. But there things you can do, and everything is encrypted on the back end, and there are ways that you can control that and keep it safer. But they do a very good job of protecting.
Now, you mentioned digital forensics as some of your early work at NASA, and you had to write scripts, and now there's a whole bunch of tools for it. Where I want to go to is attribution in digital forensics. That remains a very difficult task even today. Or has there been advancements that you have seen in that arena?
That's a good topic. Attribution, in my opinion, is essentially impossible. However, you remember that.
Please tell us why, because that's a strong statement. Yeah.
Let's say I live next to you, and okay. There's another neighbor we'll call John, and say I don't like you, and I could throw rocks at your house from John's house or direction and make it look like John is attacking you. Very easy to do this digitally. I can make it look like if China's attacking us, they can make it look like it's Russia or a friendly or someone. Attribution is very easy to manipulate and can't really be trusted. However, if you remember the movie Home Alone, they had the wet bandits, I believe, had an MO of stopping up the sink and putting the water out so that when the police eventually arrested them, they knew all the houses they had hit because they had done the same thing. And a lot of the threat actors will do the same things. And there are good groups. CrowdStrike has a really good list of what the threat actors are. And they base it upon, they use this exploit to get in. They move laterally this way and such, because we are all essentially a little bit lazy. And if you have one tool that works really well, you will just continue to use that tool. So from a forensic standpoint, you can look at how the path of the attack, and you can say, it was probably this group because it matches all of these fingerprints. However, saying that with any level of confidence to really follow up on is nearly impossible, because I could actively do the same thing as that threat group and it would look like them. So
that has all kinds of implications in the world of ransomware, especially if you are even making a modest attempt to get some of that money back, which
yes.
is
Yeah.
right. Well,
Yeah. One of the first things, I think I know where you're going with that, is that, like, should you pay the ransom? And the first thing to do would be, does this ransomware group have a history of actually helping decrypt the data that they had decrypted? Some of them do not. They just want the ransom and they have no obligation to you. They just disappear. And so having a little bit of attribution as to, this is the group that has attacked you. They have a history of a business mindset of actually delivering on the decryptor once they've been paid and such. There is a little bit of that behind it, but it's going to be a leap of faith for the company if they decide that they want to pay the ransom. So
that's exactly what I was thinking, and I just wanted you to say it without being without me being the one that's forcing the conversation on that. But let's walk us into, how does a ransomware attack begin? And when I say begin, how does somebody get scoped out and targeted for it? Like what? How, and then take us from there. Like, if you're the bad guy,
sure.
and you're like, you know what, I need 50 grand because I want to go do whatever. I want to go to Macau and play a little blackjack. I need 50 grand today. So now you're gonna, I'm gonna knock over a little company somewhere or somebody. How do you get targeted? Because one of the things is, and and this is for our listeners, not for Matthew. I know a lot of you who listen are going to say, well, you know, we only make widgets. Who the hell cares about us? No one's going to come knock on our door. And that's never the case.
Absolutely.
People do come knock, and I'll let you now take this, Matthew. So
yeah, no, I hear that so often, is that we're not a target. Well, the fact that you were in business means that money is involved. Even in nonprofits, if they collect any sort of finances in any way, then there's money there. And that means that someone without is interested. All attacks, and I consider ransomware to be the fullness of an attack. It is the worst case scenario of everything involved. Everything that happens up to that point is some level of an attack. Someone is on your system, has breached your network, is inside your network. That is escalating up to ransomware if they continued along. Okay. They all start with reconnaissance. It is the first stage. And it's easiest to think of like a burglar. At this point, they haven't broken any laws. They're just walking around your business. They're looking at what doors are available, if your windows are left open, who comes and goes. And for a ransomware attack, the reconnaissance is basically looking at what vendors you use, what employees you have, looking at their LinkedIn profiles, seeing who might have access, who works in finance, who would have access to the crown jewels at your organization. From there, you develop is weaponization, and you develop a specific type of attack for that hole, for the key for the hole that you've discovered in your reconnaissance stage of looking at the threat. From there, you're going to deliver that weapon that you've created. This is by far 95 or 96% of the time is going to be a phishing email, crafted specifically for an individual that has the right level of access or would allow the threat actor a little bit of a pigeonhole into the organization. When they deliver that,
there's some psychology involved with that. So it's not just finding the person, it's getting to know a personality that might be a little flexible in allowing someone in.
Yeah. If I was going to attack finance at a company, I would look at the company's LinkedIn page, see who was available there, see who worked in finance, see who might not have the level of security education, but have a little bit of the access that I would want. And then I want to target that person. And I'm going to look for their Facebook page. I'm going to look for their Instagram page. I'm going to look for anything about them is available to see what I could find. Maybe they have pets. Maybe I could send them an email to their work email offering them a massive discount for some pet supplies or something that they might be personally interested in. I want to make that attack as effective as possible. I can, because I'm the threat actor in this scenario, I can do this over and over and over again across the industry, across as many people as possible, until someone decides that PDF or that link is useful to them, and then they will activate it. From there, from the delivery point, we move to the next stage, which is the exploitation. The little malware that I have sent has one job. It is to hook itself into the system and create a backdoor back to me so that I can push and install, the next step, other malware that has command and control, the ability to create additional backdoors so that I don't lose that initial access. I want to be able to see what's on the system and then work towards elevating my privileges. Maybe this person has admin, but maybe they don't, in which case I definitely want administrative access on that system so that I can see everything. From there, they're going to move laterally. They're going to look around and try and move outside of that system into other systems. What network shares are available? Is there a SharePoint? Could I put something insightful on that SharePoint, like employee payroll numbers as an Excel document that has additional malware included, to try and incite other people into opening the additional malware? Maybe I send emails from that person inter-office to try and move laterally across the organization and into the other networks, because my goal is to infiltrate and control all of the key systems in that network, and then look for data. Then I'm going to look for something of value. I'm going to look for something of yours that I can hold hostage that you will want to pay for. That is the ultimate exploitation. And at which point I introduce the malware that does encrypt your data after I've pulled it off and I have it safely outside of your control, so that I can force your hand and force you to make a payment decision of, I have to have this in order to stay in business, and someone else has it.
Now, what you have described is a very intricate process that would seem like it would be time consuming to execute, but it seems that the ransomware trends have been that the execution times have gotten really, really, really low. So how has that happened if they're executing the caliber of attack that you're speaking about?
Practice. The threat actors are absolutely practicing on small, medium businesses that have little or no security staff. This is what they're hitting them with over and over again. They're refining their tools and their capabilities so that if they want to go after someone that has a lot of money, a fortune level company that has a security staff and has protections, they will have a better idea of what they're doing, the path it takes to get from A to B. They will practice. Small, medium businesses think that they're not a threat. And I can think of 16 different ways that they are. And one of them is maybe you're just a training ground. Maybe you're just something that the threat actors are using to play with their tools and see how far they can get. So,
would not even the most basic EDR platforms, or even endpoint detection platforms, pick up a lot of these movements?
Yes, that would be the very basics of, do you have don't answer this. Do you have security cameras at your house that you actively monitor? Most small, medium businesses don't have IT security. They might have antivirus put on their computer, which is not going to detect or catch this at all, because the malware will have been malformed in order to be behavior-based, which is what EDR does. Antivirus catches signature fingerprints, malware that matches exactly one of these multiple millions of them. But I can create new malware, and I can alter malware so that it doesn't match anything in antivirus. So EDR is behavior-based. If the program on your computer all of a sudden started to alter file names across a large directory, that would be a behavioral pattern that the EDR would kick off and block if it's set up correctly, if it's installed, if someone's watching it. There's a lot of things that people don't do, which is what keeps us in business.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of ifs there. and I'm not interrupting, so you keep going, man. I mean,
Yeah.
we see this every day. I mean, we see this all the time. And it's really sad because a lot of it is very preventable.
Yeah. We can continue to push the very basics of IT security over and over and over for the rest of our life because most people aren't doing it. It is the cybersecurity maturity model, whereas 0 is you're not doing any of these things.
Right.
You're reacting ad hoc. I will figure out what to do when it happens, and then you're just reacting. All the way up to the highest level of security maturity model, where not only do you have a documented policy for how to respond to any particular incident that you would be vulnerable to, the key things that would attack your organization, and you practice them, and you have tools and training and personnel. At the level 5, the highest level of maturity for that, you are working with other organizations and sharing what works from a positive white hat mindset of this is good practice and this is what we've seen happen that is helpful and such. But small, medium businesses do not have any of this. They're starting at 0. And so working with them, helping them is, it goes back to the basics, honestly. So
AI, got to bring that into the conversation because
everyone wants to talk about AI. Absolutely.
Yeah, because you just gotta now. It's obligatory almost. Is AI accelerating the ransomware process in writing
Yes.
these phishing emails?
Absolutely. And on both ends. On the attacker side, AI is being used to analyze threats, to write the phishing emails, to take we used to get phishing emails that were clearly not written by an English level speaker. English is second language or not at all. But AI now cleans that up and makes something that is very passable. It can create the images, it can modify the text, it can even create malware if you do some jailbreaking on the AI and convince it to. On the blue team defender side, AI is very useful because threat actors hit us through so often. There's so many alerts happening on the blue side that 97% of what I see is just noise. I need something to help me filter through that. And AI or LLMs or neural networks help me determine all of this crap isn't real. These are the couple of things that you need to focus on, and helps narrow my focus and can tell me without research. It has access to the library of what's available to us and tell me something that either I know or don't know or have read somewhere. It can pull it up and present it to me right away. So it is absolutely speeding it up, but it's speeding it up on both sides. However, security has always been I have a 10-foot wall outside and they have an 11-foot ladder. So I have to make a 12-foot wall and now they have a 13-foot ladder. But security is almost always reactive to what the threat actors are doing. So while AI is speeding this up, it is making that wall and ladder building move much faster. So
couldn't education of the employee base be super effective in getting ahead of the curve on this? Like really getting them to understand the whys. I mean, a lot of times security departments are the department of no, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. How about being the department of why and saying, look, man, if you go and do this, you share your password across multiple applications, this is what's going to happen.
Now, user education is the number one lever that any organization can pull. If you have 2 employees and one of them has no idea why a password needs to be long and unique, and one of them does, they have had a 30-second conversation that goes, the password has to be long and unique because otherwise it can be captured, it can be whatever and such. Between these two, this person is going to be stronger frontline security. And I think security should be an enabler. It shouldn't be that no. It should be a let's figure out how to do this better so that it's seamless and so the business can run better and more securely. If you think about like the villages, go jump back in time about 1,000 years ago, and you have a village, you have a king, and he's in the castle, and you have these farmers out in the field. Those are your frontline people, the secretaries, the customer service agents. They're the ones interacting with the world, and they will notice first when a threat comes across the hill. There's a roving band of Vikings heading towards us. And if they are educated as to what to look for, we'll run back and tell the appropriate people who can then mobilize faster and more effectively in the right direction. User education is the number one thing that IT security should do.
How do companies implement that? How would they implement it? Because most user education is just phishing testing. That's...
Yes, absolutely. It's compliance based. It's the bare minimum that they need to do and such. It is a mindset shift. It isn't anything that they can pay for. It has to start from the CISO level of letting them understand what is required, what is good practice, and then treating your frontline employees not as the crap, so-and-so clicked on another phishing link again, but rather reaching out and explaining to them what it does and how it affects the rest of the organization and their job themselves. If you can make it personal to them, you have a job here, you were employed here because of this, but security is important because if we lose the company, you'll have to go find another job. So making it important to the individual that isn't in security, but letting them know they are the front line, kind of bringing them into the security fold and treating them as an asset, not as a vulnerability. IT security has to change and large, but this is a organization by organization level change that has to happen. And I've worked at organizations that had that negative mindset in security and treated everything as a threat and said no all the time to try and lock it down. I can make you a very secure box. We will turn it off. I will take it and bury it in a hole and cover it with concrete, and I won't tell anyone where it is. But it won't be very useful. So every aspect from there to make that a useful cloud-enabled multi-user environment involves education, but also the right models around it and such. So
have you, how of the people you've interacted with as a percentage, how many companies have you worked with that have actually pulled this off successfully? The employee education mindset change?
Not as many as I would like. I would say, and I deal with, so I have experience from working with a lot of government entities and working for private enterprise, Fortune 100 level enterprises, and working at small, medium businesses. I've been an incident responder for several companies so that we just had a hotline phone number. So I've interacted with easily 1,000 companies, and I would say that just less than 10% figure out how to do it right. It's job security for us. Security will always be around. They will never make a secure system. There will always be someone trying to figure out how to break into it, figure it out, whether maliciously or not. So,
have you ever seen an organization that was not penetrable?
Yes, but I wouldn't say that I have, because at one point in my life I was given the get out of jail free card from a general that was in my back pocket and told to see how far I could infiltrate into military installation. And you can go anywhere if you have a hard hat and a ladder. People will hold the door for you, and you can go into the server room and touch it. And if I can physically touch your system, all bets are off. Physical security is the number one aspect of cybersecurity, and we just glaze over it right away. We go, okay, we'll assume they have locks on their door. But most threats that really want to get into a hardened environment, they're going to go the physical route. And it's not necessarily the James Mission Impossible jumping down through the vents. It's going to be walking up with a smile and a name tag saying, "Hey, I'm new here. Can you show me around?" and trying to fit in. So
In a lot of cases, most businesses don't have any on-prem servers anymore. Everyone's gone to the cloud. So when you go to physical security, it could be whoever your cloud provider or data center provider is at that point, right? And you don't really have access to that.
That's true to an extent, but your cloud services, you have access to it from somewhere. And the most hardened cloud service available, the cloud services are absolutely going to have good locks, guards, gates, and guns on their premises. So that's not a good attack vector. A good attack vector might be the small, rarely maintained server that accesses that cloud environment that is in behind a not a locked door and no cameras on it. That would be the way to get in. The businesses that are using the cloud, I think that trend towards cloud is going to move away. The recent AWS outage that took out a lot of companies temporarily because maybe their company didn't rely on the cloud, but all of their apps and tools were reliant on AWS East that went down. So I think a lot of companies are pulling off of the cloud so that they can handle it locally, but still physical security is important. However you access that cloud environment, that would be the attack vector that the threat actor will use. So,
what should companies have in place before an incident happens in preparation for it?
Yes, they should have a plan. Even a bad plan would be better than not having a plan. Most companies try to handle something ad hoc, and it's the adage we say is that your team won't raise to the occasion; they will fall to the level of their training. And if they don't have any training, they're going to be under stress and reacting poorly through time pressures and executive pressures on them. But if they have been trained and they have a plan to follow, they can move through the process, which is well understood. They're scientists. I consider myself a data scientist, actually. I create hypotheses and then I test them and see if they hold up. So having that plan that is understood for how to handle a ransomware attack or how to handle data exfiltration or admin on your domains controllers, having an incident response plan that walks you through the best case scenarios that has been made when not under pressure, a response plan that was made level-headed, 10 o'clock in the morning, everyone has their coffee and they walk through how to handle this, not at 3 o'clock in the morning when alarm bells are ringing and executives are breathing down their neck. That will have a better outcome than those that do not have a plan.
So there's two disheartening statistics there. On the first one, I don't have a number, but it is understood a lot of incident response plans fail, and over 70% of the backups fail on restore during an incident. Yes. That's from some insurance association. So what gives, Matthew?
Well, the backups are the key thing that they go after. Once they have access to it, they're going to start looking for where things are backed up. Because if it doesn't make any sense to encrypt all of your systems, if you can just take them offline, rebuild them right away. So the backups are absolutely one of the first things that they look for. I've worked with organizations that thought they had really good backups, and most organizations, when they deal with ransomware, they want to immediately restore. They want to jump straight to restoration, and this is not a good path. It's as if you had a leak in your boat and you're immediately trying to bail the water out instead of trying to find where the leak is. Contain it, put some blocks around it so that it can only come into a certain little area, and then patching that. That's a better path. But everyone wants to push right to remediation 9 out of 10 times. So
they do. They absolutely do. And that's interesting. That's very nuanced. You're saying don't go right to remediation, find root cause first.
Yes. Yeah. Contain the situation.
You're going to tolerate a shutdown for a period of time.
Yeah. Companies don't want to be offline. They're losing money. IT security and IT are exactly the same with two variables. If your printer stops working and you're not the one to fix it, You call up help desk. They're going to follow an if-then statement. Is the printer plugged in? Is the printer on?
Yep.
Are the drivers up to date? They're going to follow all of these. IT security does the same thing, but we have two variables that we introduce. One, the addition of a threat actor. Why is that printer not working? Has someone tampered with it? And two, time. That printer being offline cost me money. There's a stress point there. So in incident response, we're aware that we are not really battling the adversary. The adversary is like water. They just found a leak that we haven't figured out from a security standpoint. We need to plug the leak before we move on to restoring the environment. That time is often with the businesses offline. Businesses don't realize that it's not just a threat actor hit you. It's you're going to run a 10K next week, but you got hit by a bus. The 10K next week is probably not going to happen. You have to do a lot of things to restore yourself back up to walking shape before you can even consider going and running the 10K next week.
Do you have any insight then in what happened to Jaguar Land Rover then? That's one of the biggest attacks in modern.
Yeah, I haven't read fully into that one. At my level, I see so many of these things that they just become noise. It was probably a common attack that could have been prevented. Most ransomware attacks could have been prevented had X, Y, and Z been done. Security is the study of consequences. If you did not do these things, someone at some point will find a way to compromise it. And if they're desire enough, they will find a way to hold it against you so that they can get some money or whatever's valuable to them. It isn't always money.
It isn't always money. And if it's not money, those are the really troubling ones because someone is motivated by some other ulterior reason and they're coming after you for whatever they feel is important.
Whatever the company has that is valuable, and it might not even be in that company. It might be you have access or you're a vendor to someone else. Yep. You're a stepping stone to what they actually want. And this goes back into the why attribution is nearly impossible. You can't tell. So
how do you keep the executive team, the decision makers, the organization calm down during an incident? And when you said, hey, we're in a rush to remediate, right? How do you actually control that? What is some advice that has worked that you have seen?
When I'm handling as an incident commander on something, I operate in two sides. I have, for the executive team, I recognize I'm very compassionate. I see that they are suffering. They're not in IT security. They're in building widgets or whatever. They're professionals in that. I will handle that from a clearly emotional level. I listen to them. I hear what they're talking about. I hear where their stressors are and their concerns, and I'll express to them compassion that I understand and explain to them that there is a path and that just because they don't know the way to get from here to resolved, that we have one, that IT security, that incident response is a very well understood field. Professionals like myself have been doing it for years, and we understand you have to do it in this order of things. And I will explain the path that we need to pass through for them to get back from where they are in a hurting, compromised state and into a resolved business as usual and hopefully better than it was, a more secure, more streamlined, more effective business. When I'm talking with the executives, I'm in a clear, empathetic, emotional state. When I'm talking with my team, when I'm doing forensics, I'm in a clear, logical state. I'm working through that if-then statement. Did you look at this? Have you pulled these logs? Have you checked this? Can you see if there's access here? And I handle things from a clearly logical state. So I have a very clear understanding of who I'm interacting with and how I'm interacting with them. For the executive audience, I am absolutely compassionate and working to help them, educate them on the path to improvement from the compromised area that they are to a better version of themselves. Often attributed to Winston Churchill, never let a good crisis go to waste. And we will take this opportunity to improve your security, to move you into a more solid, capable state than you are now. However, you are unfortunately going to have to be offline and ineffective for that to happen. We can't clean this up and be running the business at the same time. These two things do not work together. I have to help them understand that aspect, and that can take a while to get through, and it depends on the individual that I'm talking to.
So wouldn't it make sense to take a cue from the military then and do a lot of these drills, like have that incident response plan, but also run through it and
Yes, yeah.
and get everybody emotionally mindset on what's going to happen when there is a fire. This is what we're going to do. So instead of having thinking going on and despair, everyone has a role to play in actions to be taken, and you then
Absolutely.
work the process.
Yeah, you're talking about tabletop exercises, and they are absolutely the best thing. It is education. A good company will go, okay, we don't know what we would do for if ransomware was to happen. Their IT staff and their executive staff and their legal staff and their communication department or policymakers should sit down and understand the overview of that process. What would we do to get from here to here? Then you test it. You sit down and you have a tabletop exercise. It's like playing Dungeons and Dragons. Someone external, and I've hosted many of these, will sit there and work through the scenario from a time basis and present questions as to what would happen to see how they would react. I do something in my tabletop exercises I call kill my heroes. If your organization, kill my heroes, kill your heroes. If your organization depends on Bob in IT being the guy to fix it, in my tabletop exercise, Bob will be sick or be on vacation. He will be unavailable. And that will expose problems because they'll be like, we don't know how to do this. Well, in that case, you need to have Bob document how he would do that particular action, have that written down so that someone else could step up and handle that. Kill your heroes. But the tabletop exercises, is the training that happens. And it doesn't cost any money. It is simply time put aside for your team to work through a process so they can get better at it.
Well, I mean, there's been some financial institutions, we've seen that even go as far as mandating that you cut over to your failover system and then operate from that failover system for a period of time. It's a pretty risky move to do. Not every company has the appetite to do it, but that's where they are all about resilience. They're like, we can't afford to have our ATMs be down and people not be able to access their money and whatnot. So we've built a huge amount of redundancy and resilience into our environment.
As a customer, I look for that, but I have a different mindset. Looking for companies that are doing their best to protect my data and practicing that is useful. I would see that as an advanced maturity level to be able to take your primary systems offline and work off of your redundancy. And I've seen a lot of times where the redundant systems were not effective. They did not, they pulled them up and they didn't work. I've seen backups that they thought, we compressed this backup and it should be able to work quickly. And then when it came operational time to do it, it was like, this is going to take upwards of a month to decompress and push back out because we were trying to save a couple of dollars off of space by compressing it extra tight or not doing it as often or such. So
that exposes weaknesses, which
it does.
And they wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they wouldn't have known that had they not gone through the exercise of testing it in the real world. And you don't have to test these on Black Friday. You test them on, random slow Wednesday in February. This is when you do that test so that if you are down, it affects the minimum amount of people and you have it able to bring up the primary systems again. But those tests are an advanced maturity level. So
tell us about your book, Survive Ransomware. What drove you to write it, and when is it coming out?
It is coming out this year. It is already at the editors going through its final typesetting and cleanup. I wrote this book because small, medium businesses do not have a plan. They may not even have an IT staff that can help them at all. The purpose of this book is if you read this, you will have my level 25 years of insight of paying attention to ransomware and the attack cycle to create a plan for your company and to be able to handle a ransomware incident. It breaks it out into all the different factors and phases that need to be done correctly. Every company is free to not follow this path, but if someone lays out the optimal path from A to B that takes the least amount of time, effort, energy, pain, then and it's available for anyone, that would be useful. I came about wanting to write the book because as I was studying and looking for facets of ransomware that are new to me, I was reading, and I have several of them over here, all the books on Amazon do not walk you through the actual path as if you were a small, medium business. They make assumptions that are much more technical, and I've done my best to write the book from as a low technical standpoint as possible so that it is freely available for small, medium businesses that do not have an IT security staff, that they can pick it up and in chapter 1 get started like it's literally, I think I have ransomware, now what? This is what you need to do. So
That's a very noble cause. And
I don't expect to make too much money off the book. It is simply I felt that this needed to exist in the world, and I'm a SME, so I was able to gather. And I've learned so much more about it in my creation of this. But thank you. So.
No, that's fantastic. So you join all of us who are out there. We're not making any money off this show, but we are absolutely out there trying to educate people. And just, a little bit of knowledge, you can sail oceans. So that's all we're trying to do. And hopefully that helps somebody out, because a lot of these things are very preventable if you approach them with a conscious mindset and with the ideation that you have a risk and you're going to address that risk, and you're going to do it the right way, and you're going to rely on experts. There's folks like you out there that can provide a lot of guidance, and you just got to listen. And it's not hard.
And there are people like me that truly love our job. This is what I do. To the chagrin of my wife, I'm sitting in the bedroom reading IR policy plans, trying to figure out how to make them better, just because I enjoy this. I'm that type of geek. It is ultimately, ransomware is a big, complicated problem with lots of moving pieces, but a known solution. If you look up how to solve Rubik's Cube, there's a path that you can do. Those people that you see it do in 5 seconds or so, they are doing a set path to this. And ransomware has the same triggers and responses across the entire thing. In some ways, someone's going to hurt me for this, it's easier than a Rubik's Cube, because this has so many different possible combinations, but ransomware follows the same 11 steps from initial reconnaissance through impact of kicking it off. And from there's a couple of variations of what they will do to continue to stress. It forces the organization into a single decision point: pay the ransom, don't pay the ransom, in which case there are steps that they follow after that. So it's much easier than a Rubik's Cube or a complicated thinking problem, and that it is very well understood, but most people don't know that there is a path. And that's what the book is it's the solution. So you have your first Rubik's Cube, there's a book that explains, here's how you pass through it. Here's what you need to know in order to solve it, and here's how you go through it. This is what I'm creating with this book.
Well, we're grateful that you did it, Matthew.
Thank you. It'll be available soon.
We'll look out for it, and when it is, please let us know, and we'll make sure we mention it, that it's out there, and so people can go and download, buy it at their favorite source of wherever they get their books. But we're at the hour. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with before we end this fantastic program?
Oh, absolutely. If you go to Survive Ransomware, it'll pull you up and you can pre-sign up for information that I will be giving away, pre-sales of the book. If you need help and you think you might have ransomware, If you go to Tactically Secure, that is my individual consulting practice. I'll talk to anyone for 30 minutes. I'll help you out. I'll give you an insight, and I'll let you know what needs to happen next. So,
thank you, Matthew. And when the book comes out, please do let us know. And don't be a stranger. Anytime you want to bring back a topic, you're always welcome here.
oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed this.